Hello, class. I just want to take a few minutes to show you some things that might help you on your assignment for Module 6. And so I've downloaded the solution from the instructions that you have. There's a link there to download the solution. So here we go. Let's open it up. And now I'm going to start up Visual Studio and then find it and open it that way, which is probably the best thing for you to do. I've already opened it in Visual Studio, so it would probably work for me, but the first time I tried it, just by double-clicking it here in the VDI, it didn't work out. So I would just go ahead and open up Visual Studio, then open a project or solution and navigate to it. Now, of course, what I had to do, if you're using the VDI, as I am, I downloaded it to my desktop on my local machine, and then I opened up the VDI using the client, the VMware client. And when you do that, it maps your local drive to a network drive in the VDI client, and so you can go over there and copy it over into the VDI. So that's what I've done, and so I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Now, in this assignment, you're tasked with creating your own class, a course class, and in that class, you're going to keep up with the name of the course. Now, what I'm going to show you this evening is something that goes a little bit beyond the requirements of Module 6 and into the requirements of Module 7, but not everything in the Module 7 assignment. So if you do all of this, you'll be in fantastic shape for Module 7. Now, and of course, as always, what I'm going to show you is a little bit different than the code you're given to debug it. It's a fairly major refactoring of that code, but refactoring is a good practice whenever a bug is identified in some existing code, and you're tasked with finding and correcting the bug. You should always be looking for opportunities to refactor the code to make it, you don't want to change the functionality, but you want to change how the code arrives at that output, and make it cleaner, more maintainable, more scalable at every opportunity. Of course, in a production application, you have to weigh the risks of doing the refactoring given the timeline that you have to get it fixed and back into production. It may not always be feasible, but even if you find yourself in a situation like that where it's not feasible to do at that time, you'll want to go ahead and write yourself, or maybe you won't be the one doing it, but write a work item in whatever tool you're using to keep up with that sort of thing, and like Azure DevOps, for example. Write a work item so that people don't lose track of the fact that this is some code that needs refactoring, and then the people up the food chain can rack and stack those those work items as you go along, and eventually somebody will probably be tasked to go ahead and implement that refactoring. So anyway, that's why I show you all of this refactoring, and that's why I believe these assignments are written in such a way sometimes so that it's going to make you stop and think. Okay, is this the most optimal way uh, to code this solution? And many times, as you've seen, it is not the most optimal way or the most scalable way. So that gives us an opportunity to talk about this, about opportunities for refactoring and making sure that you're following best practices. Um, and so anyway, let's go ahead and get started now. This is the main Windows XAML. So let's, this is untouched at this point. So let's go ahead and see if it'll run. And of course, we anticipate that it will not. Okay, there were some errors as we expect. For example, it's trying to create some course objects, and we don't have a course class yet, so we know that that's not going to work. So let's go ahead and let's comment out all of this stuff. And by the way, one thing I'm going to show you this evening is I'm going to show you how to use JSON file. That's JavaScript object notation. Now this is way above and beyond anything the curriculum for this course, but I think it's important to show you because in a real world application, you're not going to have your data hard coded into the application. You're going to be getting it from somewhere external to that application, more than likely from a database. But we can sort of mock that up by putting a JSON file out here that has some data in it that's encoded in as JSON, as the name goes, JavaScript object notation. So you can very easily then feed that JSON string into a set of objects of the type that the JSON string is intended to match, and you'll see that in a moment. But also, one reason this is way above and beyond the curriculum is because in order to use this JSON deserializing capability, you're going to have to install a NuGet package. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with that yet, but it's something that I think it's important for you to go ahead and see. You're certainly not on the hook for knowing how to do this by the end of this course, but if it looks easy and you want to do it, you're certainly welcome to do it. But also, in case you have any trouble, in case you want to follow any of this, these techniques I'm going to show you, but you have trouble installing the NuGet package, I'm going to show you a way to mock up having the functionality of the NuGet, of the JSON deserializer. I'm going to show you a way to just take a string that's delimited with commas and semicolons and such, and parse that out into a set of course objects. So either way, you can do it either way, or you can just follow the code, debug the code as is. But I certainly recommend learning as much as you can of the techniques I'm going to show you. Take full advantage. So let's get started then by creating our course class. Now we're going to go here and we're going to add a class. I'm going to call it course.cs. Okay, that always seems to default to internal. I'm going to make it public. And then I'm going to give it some properties. Now, another thing that you're required to do in this assignment is create some accessors and mutators. Now, the way your book shows you how to do it is not really the optimal C# way to do it, and you'll see what I mean. You know, your book is going to tell you to make two distinct methods for the accessor and the mutator. So the accessor would be get name, for example. The mutator would be set name. Well, in C#, you'll see in a moment, there's a much cleaner way to do that with a single public-facing method that encapsulates both the accessor and the mutator, or as some would say, the getter and the setter for a property. So first, let's define our properties. Now, these we're going to make private. This is a best practice. We need an ID. We didn't need a name. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to go a little bit beyond the requirements of Module 6 assignment and into some of the things that will be very helpful to you in the Module 7 assignment. So please bear with me on that. Okay, there are our properties. And now we have a class. Now I want to talk a little bit about constructors. Now I'm going to create a parameterized constructor just to make it easy to create a class with all of the data we have from our inputs for that class by sending it all into the parameterized constructor as you instantiate the object of the class. Now, when a constructor is just it's a very special type of method. It's always going to have the same name as the class itself, and it has no return type because what it returns is an instance, an object of the class. Now, if you don't code your own constructors explicitly, the compiler is when you build and create an executable, it's going to create a default constructor for you that basically just instantiates the class and returns the object. It's not going to set any of your properties or anything like that. But if you want to create a parameterized constructor to do some different things for you as you instantiate the object, then you also have to provide the default constructor because if there's already a constructor there, then the compiler is not going to handle it for you. So let's do that. Create a default constructor. What? Oh, I had the wrong keyboard. So it's going to be public course and since I'm coding it myself, I'm going to go ahead and set the properties to what I want for default values. But it's still a default constructor because it takes no arguments. Now we're not going to use this is registered property in this Module 6 assignment. However, it is going to be very useful to you. It is a requirement in Module 7 for the assignment. So I'm just going to go ahead and code it for you to get you started so you can see it. And then we'll have an accessor and a mutator for it as well. Okay, now I'm going to create the parameterized constructor. To facilitate creating objects from data feeds, and I misspelled objects. So the only difference is this still has no return type, but we're going to give it some parameters. So we're going to set the internal properties, the private properties, equal to the values that are passed in. notice I'm going ahead and setting is registered to false, even though we're not passing that in as an argument. And the reason I'm doing that is, and it's not going to matter this week because we're not going to use it, but next week you'll see that when you instantiate a new object of the class, you don't want to set is registered to true, because then the user would never be able to register for that course. So you'll see what I'm talking about next week when you actually use that. Okay, now we're going to add some accessors and mutators. So that would be, now the naming convention is that if it's a private internal property or private variable of any sort, it's going to start with a lowercase alpha character. Of course, here it's we started it with an underscore. That's fine if you want to do it. You could just omit the underscore. In fact, let's do that. And this is all internal, so nobody using an object of your class is going to be able to see that anyway. So private started with a lowercase character. Now here we're gonna make the public facing property, and it's going to be start with an alpha character. And what I want to say too about accessors and mutators is that when you later on, when you're concerned with hardening your application, making it less vulnerable to threats from cybersecurity attacks and such, these accessors and mutators are where one of the places where you want to put code to mitigate against those threats. You know, you want to check your inputs and make sure that, for example, if it's a string input, you want to make sure there's nothing in there that could be, for example, a SQL injection attack, where they code some actual structured query language into the string that they input, knowing that it's going to a part of the code that accesses the database, and then they can get back more information than they should have. Things like that. So this is exactly where you would want to put that code. So inside this public-facing property and this is just for the ID, you're going to have a get and a set. Now inside the get, we're simply going to return the private property that corresponds to this public-facing property. And I'm going to make a note here for you. Here, we could check the user's security role to verify that the user has permission. see this information. So we're not going to code that here, obviously, because we don't have the infrastructure in place to know any of this stuff. But eventually you'll be in a situation where this will make a lot more sense. Now in the setter, we're going to just set the property just like we did in the parameterized constructor. Whatever value is passed into the setter, we're going to set the internal property equal to that. And let me make a note here. And this will this note, I'm only going to put it here once in this top method, but in the getter and setter for the top method. But this will apply. This will be true for any of these accessors and mutators. What I'm going to write here. So here, when people are passing in information, trying to set up the value of a property, an internal property, and your object, that's where you want to check and make sure that somebody isn't passing in something malicious, like SQL injection, that sort of thing. So this is exactly where you want to put this kind of code. Okay, now let's make one for the name. And I'm going to go through these a little faster. Since I think you get the idea. Okay, so that's the name. Credits. And be sure and you see how I'm having to change these to lowercase. For some reason in the VDI, and I coded this earlier this afternoon on my Windows machine in my own installation of Visual Studio, and I didn't see this behavior out of the IDE, but here it's trying to return the public-facing property instead of the internal property. And you always, the whole purpose of the public-facing property is to let people interface with the internal private property, so you don't ever want to forget to check that. So again, I got to change this to the lowercase. And that's another good reason to not mix those up. You know, like if you were using uppercase for both, that would be very ambiguous. I'm not even sure you could, but if you could, that wouldn't be a good idea. Okay, is registered. And again, we're not going to use this but this week, but you're definitely going to need it next week, so I'm just trying to get you ahead of the game. Okay, now those are our public-facing accessors and mutators. And now, I believe in your instructions for this week's assignment, it says that you're going to need to override the toString functionality for this class. So let me do that. So now when somebody calls, now notice it automatically went ahead and filled in return base toString. That's not what we want. That's what it would have done if you hadn't even bothered to code this override. It would have returned just sort of some information about the class. What we want to do instead is return this dot name, and remember it's always the internal property. Now actually what you could do, and probably this is a better practice, go ahead and return the public-facing property, because if you recall, now if somebody is calling directly from outside to the public-facing property, obviously there you have to return the private internal property. But since we're already doing that, and this is the big payoff here, we're in a real-world implementation of this, you would have some of this code, for example, to see if the guy who's asking for it is authorized to see it. And so if in your toString override you return the value of the public-facing property, then you're going to take advantage of your own built-in cybersecurity code. So let's do that. So that should be it for our course class. Of course, we're going to have to come back and verify that once we go in and start actually using it. But now the next thing I want to show you is this JSON file I've been talking about. So again, JSON is JavaScript object notation. And I don't see JSON here, so let's just call it a class. When actually we're not making a class. We're just going to make a JSON. It's a data file, basically. So it's going to be a set of course objects in JavaScript object notation. So so it's going to be a set. So you need your square brackets to delineate the set. And then each object is going to be inside curly braces. And then remember in your class, your course class, you have these properties, these public facing properties. Now credits is again, and then each object is comma separated. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do some copy and paste here just to speed things up. Anyway, the credits is something that's going to be a requirement for you next week, but you don't really have to do anything with it this week, but we're going to use it anyway. At least I'm going to use it in my example. Okay, I'll make that 2, and then make that IT 200. I think you're probably already beginning to see where this data is coming from your previous assignment. Credits is going to be the same. IT 201. $270. $315. $328. $330. It doesn't seem to like this one. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure we will find out when we start trying to consume this. Oh, by the way, oh, okay, that's not a class. That needs to be renamed. That could be the problem. You're going to call it course info JSON. Okay, now that the IDE knows it isn't really a class, it's not complaining so much about the format. Now I'm going to show you one other very important thing. Now you got to go to the properties. And where it says copy to output directory, it defaults to do not copy. Go ahead and change that to copy always. Otherwise, when you build this into compiled code, and it's not going to take that JSON with it, and your code's not going to be able to find it. All right, so now we're all set up with our infrastructure. We got the JSON, we got the course class. So now let's go in here, and another thing, this is going to be a little bit painful to watch me do this, but I'm going to, just in case you have any problems installing the NuGet package to be able to use JSON, I'm going to show you a way to mock that up in just a moment. So we've got, now let's go ahead and make this private. Remember, that's always a best practice. Your internal properties should be private. If you want people to have access to them, give them a public facing access or immutator so that you can put some cybersecurity checks in there. If they can just go straight for the private property, there's no way to apply a check to that. And again, this max credit hours, that's going to be very important for you next week. But I just want to go ahead and give you a heads up on that. Same thing with the registered credit hours. And now here, again, is something that deviates a bit from the code as provided. But I think this will be very helpful. So what we're going to do, what we're going to do is populate this available courses list from either the JSON deserialized string or from your mockup. And I'm going to put here, use this only if you have trouble with the JSON. But NuGet packages are going to be a big thing in your life if you're working in Visual Studio and C#. So it's never too early to see it done anyway. So here we're going to make a string. Now this is going to be a delimited string so that I can split the string. Actually, I can split the string on, it's going to have two types of delimiters. It's going to have a semicolon to separate each instance of a course, and then it's going to have commas separating each property within a course. Now you'll see here in a moment. You see I've got the commas separating the ID, the name, and the credit hours. Then I've got a semicolon, so now I've got a new object, new course object, 3, now this is 2, and there's our string. It is so this represents a course, then this represents a course, and then as you can see there are semicolons separating each course and commas separating each property in a course. So now I'm going to go ahead and code the method that you would need if you have trouble with JSON and need to use the string mockup. Notice when I type in 3 consecutive forward slashes, it gives me the infrastructure to put some comments around on top of my new method. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's definitely a best practice. You know, you don't necessarily need to comment inside a method, but you definitely want to write some comments about what the method is supposed to do. So this method will populate the list of available courses from an input string. Now, of course, our input string is a mock-up of what would be an input string because it's just hard-coded into our source code, but you get the idea. We're setting up an infrastructure so that if we did bring in a string from an external source, we could send it through the mill here and still get the same output, same type of output. And a word too about methods. Now notice this has a void return type. Now a void, of course, that means it doesn't return any value to the caller. And so and the name, of course, set courses implies that we're going to in fact, let's call it set list of available courses, just to be clear, so that whoever's calling this knows exactly what it's going to do. And that's very important. So if you, and what I'm getting at is there's the concept of side effects. If you have a method that is not a void return type, but instead returns some values, you never want to change the state of any other member variable in your class from inside that method. That's called a side effect. In other words, the person calling your method knows that he or she is going to get back these types of values as return values, but they would have no visibility into the fact that you're actually also going to change the state of the object in some way. And so if you are going to change the state of an object, you should never mix that in with into a method that returns values. That should always be a void return type method. Because it's called a side effect, and it's a very bad thing. If you're returning values and changing the state of other variables, member variables of the class in the same method, so you definitely want to avoid that. So in this, we are going to change the state of the list of available courses because that's exactly what the method says it's going to do. And so first, we're going to split the string into the courses on the semicolon. And then we're going to use a for each loop, which I believe you learned about last week. So for each course candidate, and that's just the name I gave it, you could call it anything you want because it's just going to be an element in your array. For each element in your array, that's really what you're saying. Then we're going to split again on the comma so that we get, for each course, then we get the properties of the course. So we need an integer value. Of course, this is all going to be strings, so we need to parse that into an integer value, and then string. And we can do this because we know where each property is. We know that the first thing in the first property is the ID, the second one is the name, the third one is the credits. Again, we need an int. Okay, now that we have our properties, we can say and as you can see, we're using the parameterized constructor. I think that's lowercase, yes. We're using the parameterized constructor. Available courses, did I misspell it? Yes, I did. Available courses. Yeah, so if you see red, you know, you've probably misspelled something. So as you can see, that's not terrible, but it's a lot of work that can be avoided with JSON, which is the very next thing I'm going to show you right now. As soon as my IDE unfreezes. Okay, so the first thing let's do is get rid of all of this old stuff here. Because as you can see, we're going for a list of courses. We're not going to fool with this. So in window loaded, let's go ahead and just go ahead and assume that we're going to use this mock-up so we can see this work, and then we'll put in the JSON. I'm going to just make this note here anyway. Use this only if you have trouble with the JSON. And so we're just going to call this .set list of available courses. Okay, and then we can assume that when it returns from that, we're going to have a list of available courses. And so we can spin through those for each course and available courses. Just going to add each one to the combo box. And okay, I think we're we should be able to test now. Let's test this. One failed. So what went wrong? A namespace. Oh, it's, I apologize. It is late Saturday night. And yes, you cannot just put those inside the namespace. Properties have to be in the class. And that's a copy paste error. Okay, we should be all set now. Clean build. All right, now let's take another look here. So just to review, what we're going to do is set a list of available courses, and then for each one, we're going to put it in the combo box. What could possibly go wrong? And there they are. And let's see. So, you know, at this point, you would be ready to submit assignment 6-2, because you're not required at this until next week, until module 7, to do the stuff that I'm going to show you about checking, keeping up with how many hours the person is registered for, checking to see whether they've already registered for a course or not when they try to re-register. But I'm going to show you that anyway, and if you do it this week, you'll be way ahead. You'll still have some work to do next week, but it's just cosmetic stuff. So take full advantage. By the way, look at this. We have obviously misencoded our string. I forgot to put a space there, so let me fix that. But and then of course I want to show you the there it is. I want to show you the JSON. So as I said, this is way above and beyond, and you're certainly not on the hook for any of this this term, but I think it's important that you go ahead and get some familiarity with this. So what we're going to need to do, let me go ahead and code it first so you can see that it's going to fail because we don't have the packages installed that we need. Now we do have a stream reader. We can do all of that. And remember, I told you it's very important to remember to go and change the property of your course info JSON to um, always copy to output directory. Because if you didn't do that, um, then at this point, when the stream reader tried to find it, it wouldn't be there, and you'd get an error, a runtime error. Always bad. So the stream reader. Okay, now at this point, okay, now this, we haven't put anything in yet that won't work, even though this JSON here is just a name. So let's go ahead and see what we can get here. Make sure that we're actually able to read the JSON string. Okay, so let's go. Now let's see what we got. So hopefully you can see that, and it's here too in the watch window. So that's remember that JSON file that we coded up. It's just an array of objects. So we got there's the it's hard to point to this, it goes away, but there's the ID, there's the name, and see, these are labeled ID, name, and these have to match the public facing properties of your object. Okay, so let's go ahead. So we know we can read the string from the file. Remember now, that wasn't a read of this string. That was a read from this course info JSON. So now let's take it to the next step. So what we're going to tell it to do here And of course, this isn't going to work right away. Because as you can see, the name JSON convert does not exist in the current context. So what we're going to do, go up to Project, Manage NuGet Packages. So no packages installed. Now we're on the Installed tab. Go to the Browse tab. And here we go, Newtonsoft JSON. That's the one we want. So let's go ahead and install that. Okay, successfully installed. Okay, now what's going on? Okay, and of course now we're going to have to put in a using Newtonsoft JSON. And you see right away that lit up. By the way, let me show you something else while I'm up here. And you see all these grayed out usings. Those are not being used, and so they're just taking up just clutter. So go here to Remove and Sort Usings, and you see it's got them sorted in order of I don't know if it's alphabetical or order of importance, but anyway, they're ordered in some logical way to the IDE, and you got rid of the clutter. So you didn't lose anything you were actually using, and it's just a lot cleaner. Okay, so now oh, I put this in the wrong place. I tell you, it is late. So JSON does not exist here. That looks like it would work. So now, let's do this. Let's comment out this string. And let's comment out this method. Edit, advanced. Okay, so we've commented out this entire method, and let's comment out the call to the method. And now we should come up with exactly the same functionality. But I'm going to stop right here just to so we can see that it's coming in right here. Okay, so here's our list of available courses. We've got 0 through 6. Don't know what's going on there. Anyway, let's But before it crashed, you saw what was going on. That's something about the VDI, no doubt. So now let's actually run it, and then you should see exactly the same behavior we saw. It'll put those available courses in the combo box, and remember, now they're coming in from the JSON, and here they are. Now, you see, it's letting us register for the same course twice. It's letting us register for as many courses as we want. And that's fine. For this week, there's no requirement to do anything to stop that. Next week there will be, so let's go ahead and take a look at what you're going to be doing then. I know it's late. I know it is for me. I don't know about what time you're watching this, but bear with me. It's we're minutes away from wrapping this up. So let's see now. So in your button click event, now remember up here we coded, I said we'd be using this next week. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use it this week. The registered courses, the max credit hours, and my courses. So in the button click, we're still going to do this. But then before we add it to the list box, we're going to do some checking to see if it needs to go in there. If registered credit hours greater than or equal to max credit hours. Now, I know this is eating up time, but I want to stop and explain one last thing about this max credit hours. Now, you notice over here, I'm using this, and I think I may have explained that before. Registered credit hours as a member variable of the course, and so you register it, you reference it with this, and this keyword, this being the current instance of the class, the object of the class. Now, max credit hours, notice we're not prefacing it with this, even though they're both, neither one of them is marked static. Now, the only, if it's a static property, it's not a member of any instance of the class. It's a member of the class itself, not an instance of the class. And that, if that doesn't make sense right now, over time it will. But because it's not a member of any particular instance of a class, you don't reference it using the keyword this. Now, even though this doesn't say that it is static, anytime you make something a constant, it becomes static. Because nothing in that instance of the class can change it. And so I suppose that the people who designed this language decided, well, it needs to be static then, because it just made more sense. So anyway, that's the deal with not using the keyword this to reference this constant. So if the registered credit hours is greater than or equal to the maximum credit hours, and I believe I made that equal to 9, And remember, we put a 3 in for the credit hours, number of credits for each course. But see, that gives you the flexibility. If one of them, let's say they add on a lab to a class and make it a 4-hour class, then you could just go change the data. So anyway, if you've already registered for all the classes you're allowed to register for, we're going to pop up a message box. You have registered for the maximum number of hours. Else, if and what this is checking for, if this, oh, I messed that up. If this, if the list of my courses, we've got some, well, you'll see in a minute how that gets in there, but you know, if, in other words, this is checking to see if you've already registered for the course. And here we're going to put up a message box that says you've already registered. I'm going to use string interpolation. Else, finally, okay, if you haven't exceeded, if you aren't about to exceed your max credit hours and you haven't already registered for the course, then we're going to go ahead and let you register for the course. And this is how the course you're registered for gets into my courses, which is what we're checking up here. And remember your unary operators. So it's equal to itself plus choice.credits. Okay. It really wasn't so bad. Okay, let's see what we got. All right. Okay, 270. Now let's try to register for 200 again. A message box comes up. You've already registered for IT 200. That's what we want. Now let's Register for 3:15. Okay, so each of those is worth 3 hours, as we know. So now let's try to register for something else. 3:30. You have registered for the maximum number of hours. So that's there's as I said, next week's assignment. There's some cosmetic stuff. There's some labels on the form that you'll need to change. Instead of using those message boxes, you'll just write the text to a label on the message box that'll be provided in the UI. And that's the beauty of this. They're going to give you the UI and everything. The only thing you'll want to change is your and hang on to this course class that you're creating here, because you can just pretty much use that as is in next week's assignment, because you're going to be adding some code to the XAML.cs to set the is registered flag, and then at that point you can dispense with the list of my courses. So instead of checking to see if my courses contains the choice they just picked from available courses, next week, after you start setting a property in the course itself to say that they've already registered for it, then you just check the is registered property in choice in the course object. But that's next week. But this is going to get you way down the road for that, what I've shown you tonight. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to wrap this up, and I will, you know what, I'm going to introduce, I think the code they gave you has purposely has some errors in it for you to fix. I'm going to introduce some bugs into this and put it out there for you in the Welcome to Module 6 announcement. And so you are welcome to use this solution and debug it instead of the one provided already. It's strictly up to you. You know, I'm not going to certainly give anybody a better or worse grade depending on which one you use. As long as you do it correctly and get the right output, you know, you can get full credit. It just depends on your goals and, you know, how much you want to get out of the course, really. I certainly hope that people are learning from these videos and these examples. And I know that some of you are. I've had some feedback, and I really appreciate that. So anyway, good night, and I will, by the time you see this, of course, I will have posted everything, so we'll talk again next week. Good night.